So we've got a very exciting agenda here today, which is all about helping you to grow your companies as we head into what is still a tough environment for ad agencies and marketing services companies, and also professional services and SMB firms. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about honing your go-to-market message and creating a multi-channel outreach program. And Dean Crutchfield from Dean Crutchfield Associates will be initiating the program, talking about those two aspects of getting your company ready to go to market and drum up new business. And then Kim Elby, who's the president and founder of Janu, which is an online marketing, automation, and email marketing company, will be talking about how imperative it is to use content, quality content, for maximum advantage in your lead generation and nurturing program, as well as using integrated metrics to help you win new business. And then I'll be wrapping it up with what I'm referring to as the silver bullet that will pull everything together. So without further ado, I think the idea now is to hand it over to Dean. So Dean has a lot of experience working in brand consultancy firms and has been helping people for a long time on both sides of the Atlantic to grow their businesses. So over to you, Dean.
Well, thanks, Nigel. That's a wonderful introduction. The check's in the mail. Actually, that's kind of linked to our discussion today, because money, the cost of new business. In fact, there's been some recent studies that say that new business costs about 5 times more than keeping an existing client. That's a big investment, and we know that it takes time and money. I often joke that winning business feels like driving a new BMW off the roof of your office. It costs so much. But today, we hope to convey to you how to achieve an affordable path to growth in 2013 and answer the client's critical question, why should I care? So this session's about who you are as a business, key question, what problem do you solve, how can you make it happen, and ultimately we're looking to create a multi-channel outreach program. And key to this is trying to have some fun doing it. So next slide, please, Kim. And this actually helps you do it. I call it the grid. It's a window on your world. This is where we're going to find out what's the next right thing to do. Notice I said right thing, not big thing. What are the wicked problems you have to solve? Now, that's a lot to achieve, and I would recommend in this session that you have at least 5 people with you, and if you can have a facilitator, great. If you're a really small business, then bring in some friends, to help you give the energy to the session. Otherwise, it can be a little bit difficult to kind of fill it out. Because what the grid does, it identifies hard and soft acts and ideas that will work internally and externally to build the business. And your value proposition is the crosshairs in the grid, and it can act like a compressed management tool or a lens that can help you make decisions. But the basic idea is to saturate each quadrant with as many thoughts and actions as possible. Next slide, please, Kim. And the best place to start, of course, is looking at your products and your services. What do you have? What could you have? What can be retooled? Can you break out your offer and offer it in different ways? And then there's your image and reputation, please, Kim. You move into this area. Oh, next slide, please, Kim. So you move into the area of image attributes. How do you want to be known? How do you want to be described? How do you want to describe yourself? So this is quite important. Are you an expert in what? Are you an authority on what? If you're approachable, about what? So this is about what's being published, what's being quoted, your articles, blogs, awards, people profiles, hires, even keeping the competition informed, because they're quite important to reputation as well. And then the next slide, please, Kim, is about that style and culture, who you are. Now, you might be open, collaborative, confident, and challenging, but what about other aspects of the culture? Do you have flexible working hours? Do you have a crash? Do you have an open space program where teams can use the office or not, depending on what they want to do? Or maybe you have a 20% rule, which is basically like the Google idea, each staff member gets a day a week to work on a project, as long as it's relevant to the business, I would recommend. And then finally, please, Kim, to the next slide. Finally, we are talking about capabilities. Now, this is the toughest one. This is about what you are capable of doing literally. So try to think of actions and content that you can accomplish. It might be change the world, put it down, but what else is there? What are you truly capable of doing that you can either offer now or you can lead towards? So have fun with that one, because that's the tough one. And then the beautiful thing is I would say about half an hour on each quadrant. And What you've done now is spent about 2 hours of hard work. But what comes next is this, which is killing the darlings. So these questions here are a filter that you can actually put your ideas and initiatives through. And if they don't survive all three, they've got to be killed. Now, if you find yourself that you've killed everything, then use the filter down to 2. But what I'm trying to say is it unique to you? Can you own it? Is it credible enough for your business? Can you promote it? And ultimately, can you make it happen? And can you make it happen time and time again? Next slide, please, Kim. So this process will cut to the very core of your offer. And what we therefore do is we get a tight sense of who you are, what's your fastball, most importantly, and also what we have is that who you are is leading what you do with actionable ideas and affordable initiatives. Next slide, please, Kim. So that takes you to the 6-track outreach, and basically this is this needs to be based on like a 30 or 60-day plan in terms of how you're going to unveil this process. And what you're doing is applying the ideas and initiatives you've got to each track, brainstorming ideas that can make each track work in line with the other 5. It could be a piece of research, a unique case study, or a new spin on something already spun. So in the social media space, how does that apply with social media, the bloggers, the journalists? That needs to be thought of and researched. Networking, it's not who you know, it's how you use who you know. And when you look at that network, you've got informal parts to it, and then you've got what I call commercially important people, or CIPs. You need to identify those people because they're critical. Also events, going to conferences, running your own small events, going to networking lunches and evenings. As we know, pressing the flesh is a really important factor, and Nigel will be picking up on that later. And then next slide, please, Kim. Then you get into the more hard sell. What categories are you after? Healthcare, pharma, luxury, media? What are they? What do you have to do to bust that door down? And you really have to bust it down. I was speaking just a couple of days ago with the CMO of a bank, and I just asked her, because I like to ask, how many approaches do you get a day from marketing advertising firms? And she said, I get about 30, 40 a week. And I said, wow. I said, how do you get through them? She said, I don't. And I said, well, what, you don't look at them? And she said, look, if you don't have an insight on my customer or on my category, I'm not interested. And most of them are talking about themselves. So you've got to have something good. And then the next one is hot pursuits. What are those brands that you would chop your arm off for to do business with? Now, I would suggest not having more than 10, in fact, about 5, because you're going to put some special effort into these. But these are those hot targets you want to chase right now. And then finally, offline, online communications. What we're trying to do with this 6-track outreach program is create like a river flow of information and content that generate opportunities. So if you don't have your offline assets, whether that's a PDF, a brochure to a business card, or if you're looking at online, in your website, etc., if those aren't ready, it ain't going to run. So it's critically important that element is given a priority, which I'll now pass over because it fits perfectly with Kim Albee, who has, by the way, just been awarded as a top 40 digital strategist of the year. So I hope you're blushing, Kim.
I am. And thank you, Dean, very much. And thank you, Nigel, for having me on the webinar. What I want to talk to you guys about is content and integrated tools. So as we look at 2013 is the year that understanding and building relationships with your leads is critical. So if you want to get a jump and a growth on your growth goals and all of that, you've really got to start to understand content. And for many years now, we've been given lip service and people will say it, yep, content is king. But this year, content is essential. So we're going to talk about some strategies for content that you can employ and really look at to think through the kind of content that you're putting in front of your leads and your hot prospects and how you're nurturing your leads and keep staying top of mind. And email marketing, we're going to look at that a little bit and talk about effective email marketing. It's not about batch and blast anymore. It's about targeting, segmenting, and timing of those emails. If you really want to capture attention and you want to capture interest and engage your leads and your prospects, you've got to use good content, but then you've got to deliver it in ways that work and at the right time and in the right way. And then you want to have metrics so you know how you're doing, but mostly so that you can separate the wheat from the chaff, so you can find out who are my most responsive leads, who are the ones I could focus on for the biggest return, as opposed to looking for that needle in a haystack. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So on average, and I'm just going to read this to you, but on average, B2B content marketers are spending 33% of their marketing budgets on content marketing specifically. And that's up 26% from last year. And that was from 2012, a study in 2012. 54% are going to increase their content marketing spend in 2013. So the focus, rather than being on creating engaging content, which has won the spot for the last several years, now the focus is on generating and creating enough content. So what does all this mean? It means that we're all going to be inundated with much more crap. And I say that, mostly, to get a laugh, but really think about it. How many emails do you get now? What do you pay attention to? Well, if you send out emails that are always sell, 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 or you send out emails that are so high level that nobody cares about them, and you can't target and really deliver the content that's going to make a difference to those leads that you're really trying to turn into customers, well, guess what? They're going to just delete. They're not going to read it, and they're going to tune you out. And there's going to be so much more content coming at them that it's going to be harder and harder to get their ear. So having the essential piece here, and really to think about it, is that 97% of businesses today have no content development process. That means you're pulling content out of who knows where so you can hit that newsletter deadline and get it out, get it sent, or what have you, or to get that blog post posted. But there isn't any thought really that goes into, well, what do we want from this content? What are we driving towards? What are my calls to action? And if they don't take that call to action, what's a call to action that they could take? What's another one or an alternative? What do I want them to do? So we've started, we've gone to one end of the extreme, which is educate, educate, educate. And we've forgotten that there's a selling aspect to this. So we've dropped that and we've picked up the other. And really, we got to hit that middle ground that says, I know my target audience really well. And based on what I know, and based on the things that Dean identified as the capabilities and what makes you special and what's that value proposition, taking those two things together, then what's really the content that you can deliver, and doing that well. And here's an easy way to look at it. So there's really only 4 conversations you will ever have with leads. Okay, 4 conversations. Talk about benefits. They have answered their questions, pull at their emotions or tap those emotions, and then the ways that you're going to stay in touch to stay top of mind. And the way that you have those conversations, or the kind of conversations that you need in each one of those categories, varies based on where they are in the buying process. Are they early on? Are they in the investigation? Are they forming opinions and preferences? And are they reaching a decision? So you want to understand the differences. You have different questions high up in the buying process than you do right before you're going to make a buy. Right before you're going to make a buy, fear sets in. And you wonder, am I making the right decision? What's it going to be like to work with them? Really, what's that process? So you have different questions. So when fear starts showing up, that's actually a good sign. But you want to look at the kind of content that you need based on the issues and things like that. And we work with our clients and our customers to build out what we call call to action maps, or communication plans that really do outline this, so that the biggest question I get when people do ad hoc content development is that they have no idea where their leads are in the buying process. And yet you want to know where your leads are in the buying process. That helps you be more effective in your sales process. And understanding and mapping your content correctly and designing content, once you have that understanding, the kinds of content will pop right up at you. And then what to do isn't going to be the question. So let's talk briefly. I'm going to move on now to talk briefly about email. Batch and blast is definitely out in 2013. People are already getting inundated, and where batch and blast might return, on a cold list, 10% is a good response. On a warm list, 20%, and we high five each other when we're up at 25%. But think about it, out of 100 people, that's 25 people that took an interest. That's 75 people who didn't care. So while that's one thing, and you can kind of take some things from that, if you actually target and segment and send your emails the right message to the right person at the right time, your open rate doubles. It can be at 40% or higher, and I've seen as high as 79% open rates on emails that are done that way. That's amazing, okay? So here's why you want to target, tailor, and personalize. Marketing Sherpa's study last year, 208% conversion improvement over batch and blast. 208%. You know, with one of our own customers, when they were a customer for only 3 months, they had run a campaign. It was a multi-channel campaign. They ran, spent about $600 investment, yielded a 48% conversion rate and a 2,500% return on their investment. That's amazing. So you want to have a way to do these things, but to do them reliably and repeatedly. And that's where the right tools can make this easier. So my next question for you is, can you identify your most responsive leads? Do you know who's been visiting the most pages at your site and what have they been visiting? You can get at with lead scoring in terms of have they been visiting those pages or attending those webinars or downloading those assets that would have you know that there's an intent there, and more of an intent to buy or be sales ready. And that's where lead scoring comes in, so that you can separate out, these are my most responsive. So you can do it on a number of levels with easy sorting to get at that very, very easily, and then segment and target and reach out based on that. The biggest thing here that's missing is you want to track and act. You don't just want tracking, but you want tracking that's actionable, that from that tracking you can design and take actions easily and quickly without having to go through a whole bunch of analysis and munching of data. You really want to be able to have actionable metrics that auto segment for you so that you can speak directly to them with different messages and understand what content is working for you and what content isn't. So you want to be able to be able to get at that information and dive as deep as you need to. So if you want aggregate high-level metrics that show you graphs, great. If you want to dive into that down to the lead level so that you can actually have appropriate things to say and pursue with a specific lead to turn them into a customer, you want that. So you want both. But if you have your data spread across a bunch of different tools and point solutions, you won't get there. So if you have an email service provider, your data's in there. If you have your web analytics, well, that's great, but it's very general. So you want to be able to really have a lead management process that helps you close more leads and understand who you can focus on. And having that single dashboard, as I was saying a minute ago, that makes all the difference. You can have access to any amount of information, dive as deep as you want, and really be able to design your campaigns that are going to work. The whole idea here with that middle of the funnel activities is really to keep yourself top of mind, to understand who's most interested and identify those leads that you can focus on with your sales work. So that's the part that really makes a difference, and it can impact your sales effectiveness. You want to design content pathways and calls to action. And this is something that seems obvious, but most content, if you go look at websites, if you go look at blogs, there are no calls to action. It's just, here, consume my content. But there are no calls to action. And without calls to action, you aren't moving people forward, and it leaves you wondering where they are and whether they're interested. So you want to be able to have those. And you want to use lead nurturing to stay top of mind. You don't have enough time to call everybody and touch everybody personally by, individually and manually. That would leave you with a very small funnel. With marketing automation and the technologies that are now available, you can widen that out and have a lot of people going through that and being nurtured, that when they have taken the appropriate actions or participated and shown their interest, you can then focus them for sales activities. So that way you keep your funnel full. And implementing lead scoring tells you who is most interested, okay? And that helps you focus. And focusing and being able to focus on the hot leads and that sort of thing, instead of trying to find that needle in a haystack, improves your sales effectiveness and will jumpstart your growth in 2012 or 2013, sorry. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Nigel.
Well, thanks, Kim. That was absolutely fantastic, and it contained a couple of my favorite words, ACT and sales effectiveness. So by way of the third and final part of the webinar, I'm an unabashed salesperson, And I'm all in favor of people sitting around a table and figuring out a strategy and thinking about who they are, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, somebody needs to get up and do something and go and tell people out there what your story is. And so I think that what I see when I go around talking to ad agencies, marketing services companies, branding consultancies, data people, et cetera, people like to sit around a table in a conference room and think and strategize and figure out things. But the actual message of going out there and spreading the word it's not as glamorous, but it's absolutely essential. So what I'm going to focus on is a sort of a more action-oriented ADD sales guy approach, which is, to paraphrase Nike, just do it. Remember that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and don't think about putting off until next week what is absolutely imperative, which is going out there and meeting some strangers, putting in place a consistent, a systematic, and a strategic outreach program. You do the best. You figure out what your go-to message is, go-to-market message is, but do get up and do something. So my approach, which is based on me building companies for decades around the world and a review of the B2B literature, is adopting the hardest hitting, most effective marketing channels with the best ROI, the best bang for your buck. If you can craft, as Dean outlined, a 6-channel approach, that's fantastic. But a lot of smaller operators are constrained in terms of the budget and the resources of being able to go out there and find new clients. So what I say is that what you're going to be doing when you're going out there is you're going to be operating at the top of the sales funnel. So remember that your target prospect is very, very busy, very, very stressed out, and you need to respect her time. What you need to do, your go-to-market messaging for initiating the engagement is very top line. You know, don't try to tell them everything in the first approach. And it's important that you know exactly what your ideal prospect profile looks like. As I like to say, before you go out there hunting, be sure that you have a notion of what the target looks like. And in order to do this, you need either as part of Janu's offering, or there are many other, some of them are even free, some are very, very expensive with all the bells and whistles, but you need a fantastic customer relation management system so you can stay on top of and track your touch points with your prospects as you move them through the buying process. So it's very important at the top end of the sales funnel to create a bumper sticker slogan that is very, very pithy, that is entertaining. If you can flip to the next slide, Kim. And as Dean talked about, you need to involve people and answer that critical question, why should I care? And here's the kicker. Do it in 10 words or less. What exactly do you do? What is your killer value proposition? What makes you unique, special, and different? And really, why the hell should a successful, busy, stressed out client that probably comes trailing retinues of agencies they've worked with, partners and vendors, why should they visit your website? Why should they view your capabilities deck? Even look at your 2-minute sizzle reel or take a meeting with you. So in order to get these things to happen, what you need to do is tell your story in their context. So don't be going on, if you could flip to the next slide, please, Kim. Don't be going on and on about whatever you do. Don't go on about your people, your awards, your website, your clients. Really, their eyes are going to glaze over. It's all about your prospects. How can you help them solve their problems and their issues? You need to see the world through their eyes. And obviously, in order to do this, and I've been working with salespeople, and don't be talking about yourself. Ask them questions to engage them, and so that you can uncover what their pain points are and how your particular company is the solution to solve their problems. So as Kim outlined, in today's world, every single brand, it doesn't matter if it's a soap from a CPG company or whatever. Next slide, please, Kim. Today, we're in a world where we're all media companies. And so we need to create compelling, riveting, original content, and you have to do it on your dime. So position yourself as the subject matter expert in your particular niche, so that you occupy a place in their mind that when they have a need, they're going to turn to you because you have convinced them that you're a person that has insights and a point of view, and you know your stuff when it comes to your particular corner of the woods. So in terms of nurturing your prospects through the consideration process, as Kim articulated really well, it's a question of providing appropriate content to the right people at the right time. And it's important, this is what I refer to as the silver bullet. If you have the resources to do all the channels and everything, that's fantastic. But bare bones minimum, you can grow a company with a database and a telephone. You cannot run your marketing outreach on automatic. You can get some stuff sales ready from your marketing campaigns, but in the complex consultative kind of sell that we're talking about, the long sales cycle, the high price ticket item, you have to pick up the phone and eventually get in front of people and start talking to the people who have a propensity to be receptive to your messaging because they're consuming the stuff that you're putting out there. But you have to build a relationship with them, because at the end of the day, it's all about people and relationships. When somebody's doing, let's say, $100,000 or $250,000 deal, they need to be touched on average 12 times with messages on answering machines, with emails, with the ability to attend a webinar, to download a white paper. Before somebody will ink the deal, when the buying decision is spread out over a hierarchy of different functions, maybe in different geographies, it's very important to remember that you can't just go in there and ink the deal. It's a slow kind of process. So although you do need to have your eye on closing the deal, ABC, always be closing, don't be too obvious about it. You're building relationships. You need to work. If somebody says, I just want to learn more, nurture them along for when they have a need for your particular service. So just by way of concluding, and Dean sort of covered this stuff off, if you can afford to, in terms of getting folks sales ready, you can do social in the B2B space. Now, I hope I'm not going to set people by saying that even if you're spending 10 grand per month building your business, you're not going to get people to pull the trigger through using social media and marketing. You're going to get them aware of you, you're going to nudge them along, but you're not going to close a deal. Although social is important, it's not what I consider vital or critical. You can do, in terms of search, you can do SEO and PPC, paid or organic. And even if you're spending 5 or 10 grand a month, that's going to bring in a lot of bottom feeders and tire kickers. So you should also, if you can, host webinars, allow people to download white papers. Dean's been through some of this, attend trade shows, walk the floor, speak at conferences. But that's a question sort of you're going where the fish are, you're lurking around the water cooler or the bar, you're hoping to bump into somebody that sort of serendipitously has a budget in their back pocket. But it's sort of fishing. Email marketing, as Kim has outlined, is beautiful because of the precision, because of the cost efficiency, but because we're all drowning in a deluge of B2B content as we're going through this decade. Email marketing, if it's quality, if it's good stuff, you can build up a community that way. But ultimately, if you're just trying to do things, jumpstart with minimum amount of expenditure resources, The telephone call is the next most effective channel after a face-to-face meeting. So what to do in terms of business development? There's the nurturing that Kim has talked about, a structure for using. There's the probing, the asking of open-ended questions, getting them to talk about their problems and pain points. And at the right time, it's sort of the deal just gets closed almost effortlessly. If you've attended to basics and put in place an outreach structure that is always, you know, each of us can only sustain and grow a network of a certain size. So you can't always, although the personal connection is great, sometimes you just have to go out there and spread your wares in front of strangers, realizing that it's the beginning of a process. But do start. That's if I can leave. Don't think about this too much. You know, at the end of the day, stop the account management, stop looking after your existing account, and make sure that somebody at your company is spending a certain amount of time each day, each week, going out there doing the real hardcore missionary work at the front end of the sales funnel. So that sort of wraps up the proceedings. And I'd just like to, by way of a review, the top 5 keys that hopefully we've given you some insight is a focused killer value proposition and go-to-market message. I refer to it as billboards on the B2B highway of life. Get it very, very simple, you know, in 10 words. What is it? Adopt a consistent multi-channel outreach program. Content development strategy is very, very important as you nurture folks through their buying process. Targeted and focused email marketing and lead nurturing. And then remember, at the end of the day, the phone is your friend. So absolutely reach out and touch someone. Now, I'm not sure in terms of questions. I think we have a few. Is that right, Kim?
There are some coming in, that's some that I've already been there. So I will just start out. And one question is, what if I don't have a killer value prop? So Dean, how do you get it? You know, what would be a step for somebody to even take the first steps? And I know you had your great grid there.
It's the grid. That's what helps you do it, because you start to, out of that, you flesh out everything that you have on offer, and there you actually can start finding those rich nuggets that can help you create that killer value proposition, those 10 words. So really, that's the exercise you're trying to do, because what comes out of doing that is stuff that you can use, whether it's a paragraph that sums you up for a letter, to some themes that will be used for email marketing, etc., and so forth. So that's what it's about. So very much the value proposition of the firm should be honed by the fact you've undertaken the grid.
Okay, and then there's a follow-up question to that is, what does it take to put together a really good value proposition? Is that a huge effort? You know, what does that look like?
It depends. I know that's a consultant's answer, but it does really depend on the capabilities you've got. For instance, that was a question from someone. Now, does that someone have a team of people around him? Because you might be surprised he comes up with the idea. I've actually seen, when I've actually in workshops I've done, I've brought in receptionists, I've brought in anybody interested, and I've seen fantastic stuff come from people who are not involved, directly involved in what we were looking at. So I think that you just need to think, inventively. And so how much does it cost? How to get it is reframe the problem. Look at it a different way, and maybe have some people with you to do that. And you'd be surprised what you can get. Reframe the problem.
Excellent. All right. Another question: do I have to have a full strategy put together in order to get started?
No.
Yeah,
the idea of the 6-track, and I know, Kim, you'll answer too, but the 6-track program, what I'm saying is that it's great to have all of that going, but to Nigel's point, it's very difficult, it's very time consuming, and it can be costly. I'm hoping it's affordable for you. But what you should try to do is at least have them moving. Obviously, category pushes, ambulance chases, those are going to be hot, and your email marketing is going to be hot. And maybe the media is not slow, but you should try to reach out to, say, a blogger or a journalist who's interested in what you do. I think it's just a question of trying to get them all moving. That's the goal.
Right.
And
And
if you get, sorry.
I'm just going to jump in here just for time, but I would say that we have worked with many clients that have started out with batch and blast approach to email marketing because that's all they have. They don't have a target, they don't have segmenting in what they've been using. So it's like that's where they start. And through metrics and the things that they can see in the auto segmenting, they can very quickly get into a targeted framework that then starts to look at better content and things like that. So that's something that I've seen happen in a very short period of time. So you can start where you are, and then you can take the steps to get you where you need to be. I still think you need to understand, your target audience fairly well. Nigel, do you have a stance on that? I know that you're the just do it guy. So
Yeah, no, I think that don't paralyze yourself through too much analysis. Just get started and tier your messaging, TIER. So start with in 10 words or less. It's like meeting an old crony on the elevator. Oh, what do you do? I'm blah, blah. Make sure that everybody at the company is saying the same thing about the key thing, and phrase it in a way that people say, that's interesting, tell me more. So that you have to drip you can't just say, well, I'm not going to tell you anything. You've got to sit through my PowerPoint. You've got to look at my sizzle reel or whatever. You have to be prepared to sort of, here's the table of contents. Here's the chapter heading. Here's the, but you are telling a story. We're all storytellers. We need to go out there and fight for attention because it's a very cluttered, very, there's so many very competent marketing people that you can do something and they're prepared to do it, for not a lot of money. So the trick is you need to get your soapbox and you need to get out there and you need to prepare, rehearse, get ready, tune your message to your audience, but don't wait until you've written, the whole thing before you go out there.
Absolutely. I think, and also in entrepreneurial law, you're allowed to have 4 strategies. That's what's said. So if you're a young business, and you come up with something, don't be pinned to it. You can literally have several until you get it right. There's nothing wrong with that. I know that there are case studies out there that it sounds like he had a dream and it all came together. But there are other businesses out there that have been on a journey that's actually got to a right point. So remember that entrepreneurial law. You can have 4 vision statements in terms of contiguously as you improve your business.
Right. Okay, we've got another question here. What about, can we speak to pre-launch strategies, that could be taken on?
You mean, well, the part of the pre-launch strategies are, again, in that the 6-channel outreach program that you're trying to line up. So, for instance, you might create a piece of research, so that's one piece. Then you actually finesse the email marketing and you've got to target who it goes to. So there's pre-event material there because you're looking to generate and create it.
Yep, we're talking, for clarification, we're talking more about, the question is more about testing response to your product before you launch an email campaign. So is there a way that you can see, or that you've had any experience around, testing response? For me, while you're thinking about that, I'll just jump in here. But for me, testing response to a product before you launch an email campaign, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that. You can do consumer focus groups depending on what kind of a product you've got. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that and strategies around product launch and product innovation. But I would say I look at every marketing campaign as a test. And why is because, you're learning every single time and you're going to learn what works, what didn't, what hit, what didn't, all the time. And so if there's a way for you to take a portion of that market and run some tests out to that market, you could see is there going to be a response. So for example, way back in the day when it was a curiosity of whether people would actually buy a car on the internet, people actually put the sites up and they ran tests to see if anyone would buy. They didn't have any cars to sell, but they put them up. And then when somebody bought the car, they would go and buy it from a dealer and deliver it. And they would do it that way to see, well, does it work to have people buy cars online? Before they built everything out, they wanted to see would it work Would that, so before they spent a lot of money, they invested the money to go ahead and buy the car from a dealer, even if they lost money on that car, if anybody bought initially, just so that they could test the whole idea. So there are strategies. So I'll turn it over. Dean, do you have any ideas or any things that you've seen?
I think again, it's like you say, it's content. Have you got something? Certainly, for instance, as that bank CMO said, do you have an insight on my customer? Do you have an insight on my category, or do you have an insight on my business? And that's really it. That's what you're trying to offer in various ways. So I think it's those three keys you've got to be saying. What's that offer? What problem do you solve? And you can put together pre-event or pre-launch communications that, whether it's your website, it's front-loaded with what you're just about to send out. So if anyone checked your website out, it's consistently linked to it. So there are a number of things you can do to set up, the actual outreach that's going to happen, so that when the traffic starts to come back, it's supported or was already previously supported by some earlier information that was sent out, like a research study.
Right. I know that.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Nigel. Go ahead, Nigel.
I think that in terms of actually talking to people, when you talk to someone whether you're making an impression on them. You can see it on their face. It's, George Carlin, when he did his stand-up comedy routine, by the time he gets to Broadway, he's thoroughly rehearsed in all sorts of venues, and he knows from the audience response what's working and what isn't. So sit around, figure out your go-to-market stuff, and start talking to people and test, adapt, change, see what moves the needle, what causes the most interest, what allows you to uncover and get closer to your clients, and try those out. Just be, life's an experiment, so just be ready to duck and weave and change and revise.
Right.
Well, it's also if you're a small business, you're a one-man band, you're two, you've got friends, you've got other fellow professionals that because you have a network, and you can actually invite them. They 5 or 7 people, maybe for an informal, evening where you actually show them the product, the presentation, and your pitch, and say, guys, can you give me some feedback? Nothing wrong with that. It doesn't cost you a penny, maybe a couple of beers afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So here's another question. It seems like content development was going to take a lot of time. Any tips on how to focus time there? How to know what is the best to start with?
Well, I think in terms of, again, the outputs of the grid, if you actually do that, and you've got all your products and services ideas, and your image and attributes, etc., that you want, it's that kill the darlings. That will prioritize what you have and what you should use. If you're a ruthless enemy to ambiguity and do it properly, then you will literally find yourself killing the darlings. I mean, you're talking 60, 70, 80% of what you put up is going to be taken off. So what you're left with is pretty bare bones, but hopefully there's some good meat that you can either create because you've suggested it's something you can do, or it's something you can retool. I mean, for instance, you might have done a phase 1 audit on a piece of business that you were going after, say in pharma or media. Now that phase 1 means that you are a category expert. You could take that somewhere else. You could retool it and then contact all the competitors saying you've got some great insights to share them. So use what you've got. You'd be surprised what you have when you break it out.
Yeah, and I would say, on that front, some questions that you could look at are, here's a couple questions. What are the benefits that your customers enjoy? And not from your benefit statement, because I know that you'll have a full benefit list, but what really do they enjoy from their perspective? If you're to say, what's the benefit that you get from working with, so-and-so organization, what would they say? And from there, what's their challenge? What's the challenge of why they enjoy that benefit? If that's a benefit they enjoy, what was life before that? And then you'll start to get at what are those issues. But that gets you started to think about that whole capabilities side that I think, Dean, you talk about, that, what can we do? What are our capabilities?
Yeah.
What value do we bring to our clients, right?
It's the engine room, yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly. So that's another piece of it. I know that there's a whole way to come up with, when you just come up with content, you also want to talk about when they consume that content, what would you like them to do? If you're talking about something broad, can you offer a checklist that helps bring it home for them, like helps them take it from out there and other people have this going on to, hey, do I have this going on and how do I match up? So those kinds of things can get people taking it from them not looking at their own, situation to them starting to look at their own situation. So that can be a good call to action, but it's a good way for you to start to get some information and move it along. So that's just part of, thinking about not just content, but what do you want them to do? And if they don't do that first thing, what else would you like them to do? Have a second thing. So that's another thing that I would say, but there's basic questions here that can really help your content process. Let's see. What does it cost to put this is, I think, our last question, but what is it that I see coming in? Does it take in terms of cost to put something like this together? Yeah, I know.
Someone asked the money question. I think all of us can say that it really does depend, because you might be able to do a lot of it yourself. And if not, then you're relying on other people. And I think it depends on who you're networking with. What's the hourly rate? What you can get them for a month? It varies. But it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. It can be very affordably done. I've pursued opportunity all my life, and I've done it with very limited resources because I've come from a branding agency world where they tend to have really not much to offer. So you get used to it. You create stuff that you can do to make it affordable because no one's got the budget to spend. And clearly a lot of small businesses don't have that. But those 6-track channels and that fact of picking up the phone, they work, especially picking up the phone. You have to pick up the phone. And one thing I know Nigel can back me up on, I didn't mention before, is that if you are doing this and you are listening and you are going to say, okay, I'm going to do some smile and dial, I'm picking up the phone, don't forget, the first call won't get it, the second call won't get it, the third call won't get it. But guess what? Most people give up then. It's the 5th call that gets the meeting. Don't forget it.
Yeah, I think there's a study actually that where 90% or 80%, 86% of companies do not contact leads 5 times or more, and yet 80% of sales, 80% of sales happen on or after the 5th contact point, and that would speak to Nigel's point about 12 touch points as well. So it's how do you get there? Because most of us, if it's a direct deal and we don't have any tools to help us stay in touch, we stop after about 3 contacts. Would you say that? Have you seen that, Nigel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The salesperson is always under the gun to meet quota for the current quarter. So they're always looking for, a hot lead. But yeah, and I've experienced this as a buyer, that people, they just don't follow up. They don't follow through, and that's why a database is so vital. And that's part of building a relationship. If you say you're going to do something, over deliver, delight the client, the prospect, or, and build a relationship. That's what it's all about. So guys, I think it's time to wrap up. I would just like to thank Dean Crutchfield from Dean Crutchfield Associates and Kim Elby from Janu very, very much indeed for joining me today. I would like to thank all of you for doing what I always think is the most difficult thing, which is listening and not talking. Hopefully we taught you a trick or two. Hopefully we entertained you slightly. Thank you very, very much. We have recorded the webinar, and that will be available. And we'll send you a link that in honor of being recognized as one of the top 40 online strategists, Kim is putting together one digital strategy per week for the next 40 weeks. And I would like to thank you all very, very much. And I think you know how to get hold of us. The easiest way is send an email to Nigel at PipelineTorque. And when we plan and get the next webinar together, we'll be sure to invite you. And if you have any ideas or things that you in particular would like us to dive deeper into and focus on, we'd love to do that. And I hope you all have a fantastic Thursday. Thanks, everybody. Bye then.